Hi there. This is a video to help us better understand some of the very, very basic concepts as it relates to research methods within psychology. Right? So, psychology is one of the social sciences, and with anything within science, we use the scientific method. Right? So, we have observations of things that we've noticed in life, things that we don't quite understand, or things that we're curious about. We develop a hypothesis about what we think might explain that. And then we design studies to see if we can gather the necessary information to help address that question or concern or the observation that we have. We see if we're correct, and then we continue that process as we fine-tune it or explore that idea in different ways. Right? So at the core of this is critical thinking. Right? So there's a quote from Einstein that I've always liked. It says, "The value of a college education is not the learning of many facts, but the training of the mind to think." Right? So critical thinking is at the core of all quality research. Right? It's helping us question things. It's helping us be curious and kind of always verify information. All those are important principles of critical thinking and for quality research. Now, research in psychology is broken into two major categories. We have qualitative research and quantitative research. Right? Very similar words, but very different approaches. Qualitative research is something that's going to be more interested in describing something and trying to gather information to better describe something. Right? So the information that's collected is usually expressed in words, and it's really good for when you have an initial hypothesis and you're trying to explore maybe different ways. Qualitative research is really great for this. It has an extreme value, right? So some common techniques or approaches, different study designs that you'll see within qualitative research. You're going to have things like surveys, right? So we see these all the time. We click through and answer those questions. So you have surveys. You can do something called a case study. Right? So this is where you have a really in-depth study of just one person or a small group of people. Right? You don't want it to be large because you're going to gather a lot of information about just that one person. Okay? And because of the time and effort that goes into it, it's typically done, these case studies are typically done when there's something unique, special, different, or rare about what's going on. Right? That's kind of the reason you would use a case study. Or it's something that's brand new and we're not sure. And so that's why we're gathering all the information. Okay? Within qualitative research, you'll also see things like correlations. Right? So correlations are a bit tricky because it's a math thing, but it's still considered within qualitative research. And basically what we're trying to do is we want to take two numbers. They have to be a special type of number. And what we want to do is just a very simple formula. Are these two numbers connected? Okay, so for example, if number A, as it increases or decreases, as it begins to change, what happens to the other number? Does it also change? And if so, does it change in the same way or kind of in the same degree of change? Right? So the key thing, though, with correlations is that even if we can establish that two numbers have a relationship, they are correlated and they do the same thing at the same time, or roughly speaking, do the opposite thing at the opposite time, but in the same degree, even if we can establish that correlation or relationship, doesn't actually mean that those two things are connected. Right? So, for example, the most common thing that I like to share is if we look at correlations, one of the things that we're going to see is that there is a high correlation between murder rates and ice cream sales. Okay? As murder rates go up, ice cream sales go up. When ice cream sales start to drop, murder rates also start to drop. What we don't want to do is say that the two are connected. Right? We don't want to say, if you eat that pint of Ben & Jerry's, you're going to go out and kill somebody, because that's not the case. Right? What's really happening is ice cream sales tend to increase when it's hot outside, so during the summer months. What we also tend to find is that when it's hot outside, people are more irritable and upset, more easily angered, and so murder rates also tend to rise during the summer or warmer months. Right? So that's the better explanation. So the key thing about correlation is that just because one exists, just because we can establish a relationship with the math, if you will, doesn't actually mean anything. Right? We still wanted to go and do some quantitative research. These are our experiments in order to verify that. Okay, so with an experiment, what we want to do is set up the parameters where we are controlling everything, right? And so as we have that control, any results that we find, we can directly attribute it to the things that we were manipulating and controlling. All right, we've already kind of explained out everything else. All right, now, because of that, what we're going to see is that it makes it a little more difficult for saying that it's real lifelike because there's so much control, but there's no other way around that necessarily. Every type of research that you're going to see, it's going to have its pros and its cons. But experiments are kind of what we want to do, right? We want to gather our participants together. We want to set up our scenario. We're going to get our sample group, and these are just our comparison, right? These the people that nothing's really being done with them. Here's our other group, our experimental group. This is where we're going to implement whatever the variable is, and then we're just going to compare the two, right? Did something happen with the experiment group? Did the results change compared to that control group? If so, we're going to say it's due to the specific things that we were doing. And again, the reason we're able to do that is because we've controlled and we're manipulating all the other variables so that this was the only thing that was different between the two. Okay, I hope that makes sense. The key thing, though, is that with any of this research, given what we see with the scientific method, it is a continual cycle. It's a loop that just keeps repeating and repeating. So when you get to your results and draw your conclusions, if you were wrong, like your hypothesis was wrong, that's okay, because you still learned something. And then we're going to take that and we're going to retool the hypothesis. We're going to come up with a different idea, and we'll start over again and do another experiment. Okay, so even when you're right, or even when you're wrong, you're still on the right track. Okay. And the other thing is, though, is that you went through the whole entire process. You did the study, you conducted the experiment, you got your results, and you were right? Your hypothesis matched. It doesn't matter. You're going to have to do it again, right? We want to make sure it wasn't a fluke, that it wasn't just coincidence. And so you're going to have to repeat those studies again. And it's just to help verify those results. Okay. So there's a lot that goes into research. It's important, though, because it serves as the foundation of everything that we know